YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today, we're talking NFL trade candidates, some big names that we could actually see traded maybe as early as next week. Teams are actually able to save more money by trading players post June 1st, after June 1st. So that is why these rumors are starting to heat up. So we're going to talk about some big names, how much space those teams can clear by trading them after June 1st, and where they possibly can go. So really excited about this video. We're in the middle of recording record predictions as well. Some of those already up. You can find a playlist full of what we have done so far, more to come. Follow our Twitter for constant updates, and you guys vote for a lot of things, get involved in videos. So check that out. Link in the description and comments every single video. Yeah, here's our Twitter. Just constant updates on things, NFL channel. So yeah, check it out. Let's talk about the obvious one first, Julio Jones. We have a whole video dedicated to just Julio Jones with some trade scenarios involving a lot of veteran players, so check that out if you haven't seen it. But we're touching on some things again here with Julio Jones, a big name that not only can be traded after June 1st, which is next week, but I think actually will be traded. And there's a reason, people have talked about, even some credible people have talked about, maybe surprising he wasn't traded yet or traded before the draft. I disagree with that, because the Falcons actually lose money, negative cap space, if they traded Julio Jones before June 1st. You're able to avoid paying bonuses and guarantees if you wait till after June 1st. It's an interesting NFL rule there, and you only get 2 of those a year per team. So actually the only thing that makes sense is a trade after June 1st, so June 2nd, and they actually would clear $15.3 million. So quite the opposite of losing. I think they would be losing $200,000 trading them now or before the draft, whenever it was. So $15.3 million they will save. So they're going to wait, and I think they're going to do it because they kind of want to clear that space. They drafted Kyle Pitts. The way Julio's talking, it sounds like he's out of there. Value to me, day 2 pick or picks. You can throw players in there. It might be just one day 2 pick with players. There's a lot of players that could be traded, especially with some of these teams. We've heard somebody offered a future first, which is a little surprising to me. But if you remember on the Julio Jones trade, I said it's unlikely a first-round pick is traded, but I'm not going to rule it out. Why? Because I could see somebody giving up a future first if the Falcons agree to pay maybe a small portion or a portion of Julio Jones' salary, because $15.3 million will be the cap hit to the team that trades for him. That's a lot of money for anybody, especially in a year where everyone's a little limited. Not everyone, but everybody's a little limited compared to normal in terms of cap space. So a team may be like, we'll give you a future first. You got to pay a little bit. The Falcons don't want to pay a lot though, but 15.3 is a lot, so they can afford to pay, $5 million, around that range. But do they want to? Would they rather take a day 2 pick or picks plus players if they're involved, and then not pay any salary? So the Falcons may look to do that because, again, they're trying to clear space. The tier 1 landing spots to me, I'm going to throw the Patriots out there. It's been confirmation that they've had internal discussions, which isn't a lot. That's not big news, really. They discussed it internal, within the organization, which a lot of teams probably have. But we know they're somewhat serious. I don't see them trading the first. Bill Belichick normally doesn't do that. I can see them offering players. We talked about what players they can offer in the Julio Jones video that was somewhat recent. There's some players they can offer, like a Sony Michel, N'Keal Harry, along those lines. Maybe with day 2 pick or 2 there. 49ers, familiar with Shanahan's, him as a person, as a coach, and his system. And the 49ers are looking for a receiver. Thought it was interesting that they were trying to trade for DeSean Hamilton. What does that tell us? That tells us they're looking for a receiver, so maybe they're in on Julio Jones, but it may tell us they're looking for more of a rotation guy, so that can pull them out of the sweepstakes for Julio Jones, because do they feel like they need a number 1? If they got 2 solid number 1s to me in Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, injury concern mainly with Deebo Samuel kind of leaves them needing another legit receiver. The Chargers doesn't really feel like they need a receiver as bad as some of the other teams. Not that the other teams really need it that badly, but they definitely could use another one. It's a high-powered passing attack offense with Justin Herbert. That's what they want it to be. They have the cap space now. They have the cap space in the future. So that's a team to look out for. They can pay him straight up right now. Their picks might be pretty valuable this year because, they're going to be confident they can be a good team because they are a good team. But, a little bit of adjustments. Second year quarterback, obviously. How, will he continue to play the way he did? And then a new coaching staff in there. And the Tennessee Titans, who have been linked to him, it's weird because it's the only team that we can confirm actually had discussions with the Falcons about trading for Julio Jones. So that's a plus. That means maybe the Titans should be the top tier of their own, the elite tier landing spots. But then now it sounded like it's unlikely. They had discussions, but it's turned to unlikely. So we'll see. I know A.J. Brown's pushing for it, but, he doesn't have pull with what they do in the front office there. I thought that Rashaan Evans could be on the move out to Atlanta, possibly if this trade happens. But it's a team that's going to run, two receivers are going to get most of their reps because, they run the ball a ton. They run with tight ends, and that, they could be set for now with A.J. Brown and Josh Reynolds, and they drafted some receivers, and they drafted Des Fitzpatrick. So maybe that'd be the reason why they don't. Maybe they don't feel like this is a bunch of value for them. And they are a little limited on cap space, so they would have to rework some deals, which they can. But a lot would have to happen, maybe making it a little more unlikely, but I'd still throw them in the tier 1 just because they're the only team that we can confirm that actually made the phone call post-draft. We've heard about some teams pre-draft. So those are my tier 1 landing spots. Tier 2 landing spots, we'll throw the Colts in there. The Colts are pretty interesting because, they recently signed Eric Fisher, and we recently found out how they worked that deal out. They made it a void deal, which means they're pushing some cap space in a 1-year deal, which they're pushing some cap space to next year to save extra space this year. Now, you only do that if you plan to need that money this year or spend that money this year. They had plenty of money, cap space, so they didn't really need to do that. So it almost feels like they're not done. They're going to do something. It's really what it feels like, but that doesn't mean they go all in on Julio Jones. That's not really what it means there. We've been hearing a lot why they've been kind of quiet this offseason. This really hasn't been confirmed, but that they may want to save some money to pay their own guys because they got a lot of upcoming free agents, that they like. That really has nothing to do with this year's cap hit, but future. And if that is the case, though, and that's how they feel, they're not going to be in on Julio Jones because he has some pretty big future cap hits. So that would kind of contradict that thought, but maybe that's really not their firm thought. I think fans have really thrown that out. So we'll see. Ravens have kind of got knocked down the tier list because they drafted. They were actually in on Julio Jones pre-draft. They made the call, showing some interest, and they draft Rashad Bateman, very good receiver from Minnesota. We hear that they did not expect him to be there. So, and they also get Tyler Wallace on top of their other receivers as well. So it kind of feels like they're, we almost can put them in the wild card. They're kind of on the fringe at this point. I throw the Raiders in tier 2. They're looking for a legit number 1 receiver out there. Henry Ruggs isn't anything set in stone there. He can be very solid. But something to kind of pair with Darren Waller for the big duo, there for the Raiders to keep that passing attack a little alive, but more alive, but a little limited on the cap space. Could they trade something? Could they rework some deals? Possibility. Wild card landing spots. The Rams feels like they have enough receivers. I've heard it's kind of been kept quiet. I've heard that they actually are monitoring the situation, and they could be interested because they're trying to make this offense as explosive as possible for Matthew Stafford because it's pretty much, it feels like a 2-year plan. Obviously, they can extend Stafford, but they're trying to win a Super Bowl within the next 2 years. That is they want to win both, really. Everybody does, but that's really the plan. That's kind of why it's a boom or bust deal for Matthew Stafford. So they're trying to make it as good as possible. I've heard the Cardinals are a team to watch out for. It's a little bit more of a long shot for me because they have plenty of these outside receivers where they even added A.J. Green. They draft Rondale Moore. Finally, they get somebody for the inside. It's a little more of a long shot to me. They're on here because I've heard it's a team to watch. Washington, they did kind of add to the receiver unit, between Curtis Samuel and De'Ami Brown, who I like in the draft, on top of Terry McLaurin. But they don't have this Julio Jones type of receiver. It's a wild card team. The Chiefs, team that's never afraid to get better. The problem here is he's got a pretty big cap hit this year and in the future, and the Chiefs got some cap hits coming, but they're very good at shifting around their money. So I wouldn't really rule them out just because they're never afraid to get better. And I threw the Lions in here just because I actually kind of like this roster. The offensive line's pretty solid. It's not a great roster, but it's better than what people give them credit for. But what's holding them back? Receiver. They need a number 1 receiver. So that is why I threw them in here. They can be a much better team adding a guy like Julio Jones. But why it doesn't really make sense is because they kind of let Kenny Golladay go, who almost felt like a franchise piece at one point, because they're gearing more towards the rebuild. So trading for Julio Jones would contradict the absolute you-know-what out of that. So I don't know if I would agree with it, but at the same time, if they added a number one receiver, if they had Kenny Golladay right now, I would think the Lions could actually do some damage in the NFC North. That is the problem for them right now, having that top receiver for Jared Goff. They got the offensive line for Jared Goff, the running game. So I threw them in here. A lot of people saying Packers. The Packers are very limited on cap space this year. I think they can manage to clear a little bit, maybe trading Preston Smith, reworking some more deals. But here's the big but. The big why not? Why not the Packers? They have the most money invested for next year, cap-wise. They have the most in the NFL. Not ideal. They're looking at negative 30 cap space. Even with the raised cap next year, Julio Jones, pretty big cap hit. They just can't do it. They just can't do it. So they would have to trade a lot of players away probably. Then they can do it, but it'd have to be a lot of players where they would probably just be hurting the team. So I just don't see it happening there. I know a lot of fans saying Packers, but it would blow my mind if they somehow pulled it off and I don't know if it would be a good thing because then they would be even more of a hole than they were already in. They probably trade players away. So it wouldn't really make sense. But yeah, I like those. I think he ends up on one of those tier 1 teams come next week sometime. So we'll see. Another big time player, Danielle Hunter of the Vikings. This is an interesting one too because we're heading into free agency, and we're starting to hear his name get thrown out there. He's liking tweets about him possibly getting traded, that too. He's not happy about his contract, and it was kind of some rumors. Nothing really confirmed, but there was some credible people saying kind of watch out for this, maybe. And then it just disappeared. It kind of just disappeared, and you kind of wonder why. I guess everyone kind of assumed, yeah, that was maybe BS, just rumors. He didn't. Only 2 players not showing up to OTAs for the Minnesota Vikings. He is one of them. That's interesting. And you start to think why it makes sense that his name it kind of disappeared. It kind of got swept under the rug. Why his name went away for the trade talk? Well, it happens to do with the June 1st trade rules. There, the Vikings only save about $5 million trading him anytime before June 1st, whether it's free agency, the draft, whatever. 12.15 after June 1st. So that's why some of these trade talks, some of these big-time players, involved in trade talks kind of went away a little bit. That is why, because the post-June 1st rules here. So the Vikings clear a lot more money if they trade him after. I still don't think it's ideal, or they don't want to really trade him, but they don't really want to give him more money at this point either. So we'll see. Value, he's got a lot of value. I mean, this is one of the better 4-3 defensive ends in football. He's gotten better every year. He's still young. He's actually still getting better. Because remember, he was a raw prospect out of LSU. So it's a first-round pick plus. You got to throw a plus onto there as well. If he, guarantees that he's going to hold out, he needs to be traded. I think the Vikings lose a little bit of leverage. I don't know. The Vikings feel like they didn't really lose any leverage with Diggs, though, for some reason. So they may prefer him just to sit out than trade him away. So we'll see. Landing spots, tier 1 to me is going to be, I like the Jets. Imagine pairing him with Carl Lawson. It's actually a pretty big hole over there in New York is another edge rusher. Remember, Carl Lawson's really not guaranteed. You could actually compare Carl Lawson to Danielle Hunter, kind of a poor man's Danielle Hunter, still growing. He has the traits, and Danielle Hunter kind of hit that growth. He hit that potential and still going. So that would be an incredible duo. That would make the Jets that much better. The Jets also have the cap space now. They have the cap space in the future. Remember, he's demanding more money, so you're going to have to give him at least $20 million per year. I mean, would Joey Bosa get 26, 27 range? Myles Garrett up there as well per year. So, yeah, Hunter's definitely a big-time pass rusher, so you'd have to get that. The Chargers, to me, they're expected to run a 3-4. Joey Bosa fits more of a 3-4 end in that role. Hunter does fit more of a 4-3 end. I think he has the ability to stand up in a 3-4. He got some looks 2 years ago at the Vikings doing that, so I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's more likely he goes to where somebody needs him as a defensive end. But to me, the Chargers, it looks like the projected pass rushers, edge rushers are Nwosu and Fackrell. Not ideal. They also have the cap space now and the future. The Colts are, a little on the weaker side in terms of their defensive ends. They did add Kwity Paye. That's fantastic. The problem here is they don't have a first or a second to offer this year, but maybe in the future. would they be willing to throw one of those rookies in there? I think if the Colts got a guy like Danielle Hunter, that would really boost, who they are as a team, what they are as a team as well. They also have the cap space now. In the future, they do want to save money for paying guys, but this is a guy, I think a little different than Julio Jones. This is a guy that you don't really hesitate paying for the future. Tier 2 landing spots, the Jaguars. They do have Josh Allen, who I love, and Clavon Chason, who's a raw prospect with a lot of upside, but they could get better there with Danielle Hunter. And then the Bengals as well. They do have some players, but they're looking for a little more athleticism off the edge there, so they could, and they have the cap space now for the future. Thing with them is, do they want to trade a first-round pick this year? That could be a pretty good pick, but that's where Hunter's value is at, perhaps, for some teams. The Ravens definitely need to get better at the edge rush position. The problem is, would they view him as a fit? Because Hunter can actually drop back in coverage. He doesn't really feel like, a Ravens pass rusher with the amount of times they drop back coverage, but he can do it, and they definitely could look to get better there. I don't know if they value the position enough to trade, that much value for a guy like Danielle Hunter, though, but they would be a dominant defense if so. Wild card landing spots, Broncos, George Payton over there, familiar with Danielle Hunter, coming from the Vikings. Obviously he's got to have some love for him. But they do have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. There's just injury concern, and Von Miller could be gone after this year. They also have the cap space, so they could be getting prepared here. The Browns, I would actually throw the Browns in Tier 1 if they didn't add Jadeveon Clowney. I think the Browns should be in on this. Familiar face with Kevin Stefanski over this. And they have the cap space. If the Browns got Danielle Hunter, it's over. I'm picking the Browns to win the Super Bowl. Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, the best pass rush duo maybe we've ever seen, really. So the Browns should be in Tier 1. Adding Clowney affects it a little bit. The Chiefs, the Chiefs are never afraid to get better. They could use an edge rusher opposite Frank Clark. He definitely fits. Will they have the money in the future to be able to do it, though? I'd throw the Steelers in there. They were actually trying to add a guy like Ryan Kerrigan. They were in talks about getting some other guys there. They're looking to add somebody else. They lost Bud Dupree, and then TJ Watt with Danielle Hunter would be something else. Would they view him as a fit in a 3-4? Some teams will, some teams won't. Tennessee Titans, they have Bud Dupree. They have Harold Landry, but they could be looking to add another one here, a possibility. And I threw the Bills in here. I just don't think they have the cap space right now. This is a deep wild card. I think they drafted some young pass rushers for a reason because they didn't have the cap space to add. But, if the Vikings were willing to take on, a Jerry Hughes or a Mario Addison, I definitely think it's possible. So we throw them in the wild card. But I really like the Jets. The Jets really separate themselves, I think. The Browns would be just fantastic, but I really think the Jets separate themselves here. For this one, I said Julio happens. I don't think this one happens still, mainly because I don't think the Vikings really want to trade him because the Vikings got a pretty complete team. Trading away for picks, what's it really going to do for them? They really need Danielle Hunter. The difference of the Vikings with and without Danielle Hunter, pretty significant. They're obviously trying to win right now. So I don't think they want to trade him, but we will see if he holds out. We'll see if they're willing to. Doesn't sound like they're willing to give him more money, though, but we'll see. Maybe they'll adjust it a little bit. The good thing is the Vikings actually will gain more money after June 1st because the Kyle Rudolph cut was a June 1st cut, and that's about $7 million added to their cap space. So that's pretty good. Zach Ertz, we heard the trade talks about Zach Ertz. And why did they just disappear? 2 reasons. One, because the Eagles were asking too much. Teams were just not willing to trade that for a veteran tight end. It's still pretty good, but you got to pay a little bit now, and he wants more money in the future. Plus, the whole June 1st deadline thing, because the Eagles only save around $5 million trading him before, and they save $8.5 million after. They're a little tight on the cap space. They definitely want to wait and trade him after. So that's it. Sound like at one point they're asking for a third. I think it dropped to a fourth, but teams weren't willing to do it still. I'm thinking a fifth and maybe throw a swap of picks or maybe a fifth and a seventh. I think around that range. And you throw the Colts in there again. We heard the Colts were interested. It felt like maybe there was some talks that Ertz can come along with Wentz, but that didn't really work out that way. Who knows how accurate that was. But the Colts were somewhat interested. They love their tight ends. They know how to use the tight ends. Wentz, Ertz. Very successful together, so that would make some sense. I wouldn't love it for the Colts. I kind of like their tight end unit the way it is. I think you almost can throw anybody in there, and they figure out how to make it work. They can they improve tight ends games. I think it's a system thing there. I love that scheme there, Frank Reich's system. But they have the cap space. This really isn't too much of a dent on their future plans, in my opinion. Though the Jaguars, and I know they added Tim Tebow, but they could actually use a legit one, in my opinion. And the same with the Bengals. The Bengals want to air out the ball, and those teams have plenty of cap space. The negative, or I shouldn't say negative, but the reason why those teams, Jaguars, Bengals, would not do it, does he really fit? They're kind of somewhere in that rebuild stages. They're past stage 1 of rebuild mode. Obviously, they can make some noise now, but they're a young team. Does Ertz fit that? That's kind of the question there. Tier 2, throw the Jets in there. They can use a tight end. Very young team, kind of growing as well. They're kind of in the mix of the Jags, Bengals. I guess we could probably put them in the same tier, but they're around that range. Chargers added Jared Cook, but they want to be a high-powered passing team. They can look to get better here. And the Seahawks, they're still sitting there with a little bit of money, maybe just enough to get a guy like Zach Ertz, but do they want to spend the rest of it there to do that? But they would be much better, and they value a tight end. And their tight end room, I definitely think needs to be better. It doesn't maybe need to be better, but it could be better. I do like a young Will Dissly, but he's got to stay healthy as well. Wild card spots, the tight ends could use a tight end there. But yeah, again, they're a little limited on cap space. Do they want to restructure deals just to add a guy like Zach Ertz? I think it'd be pretty good. They run 2 tight ends quite a bit. It's kind of just Ferkser by himself out there right now. So maybe, looking at it that way, it looks like, okay, the Titans got to be in. But do they want to clear space for a guy like Zach Ertz? I don't know if they want to extend him for the money he wants. With all the 49ers in there, they've been looking to use more than just Kittle, 1-2 punch there. And they've been trying to maybe add a receiver. Maybe if they miss on that, we'll just go with the dual tight ends there, a little cheaper than trading for Julio Jones. I do think a possibility, but I do think they're more in on the receivers. So maybe that's why they are a wild card. So Zach Ertz, I think a trade could be coming. A cut could be coming if he really doesn't want to play for the Eagles. But I think they would probably rather just keep him and have him play here. And if you want, I don't know if he wants to actually hold out. I don't know if I actually see that. So definitely one. I expect some kind of Zach Ertz move to be made. Julio, I expect a trade. Some kind of Zach Ertz move to be made. Maybe not as early as Julio. Talking about Danielle Hunter. Maybe a little more of a long shot than the others, but it's definitely something to look out for. I got a wild card one here that I actually like. It's Melvin Gordon, the running back from the Broncos. I haven't heard anything. Nothing. Not even, a little bit of not some whispers, anything. But I'm kind of just thinking here. They signed Mike Boone, and it's not a lot of money they signed Mike Boone for, but for right now, a number 3 running back, it's kind of a lot of money for a number 3 running back. He's pretty solid, too. I think he's a good 2. And they draft my number 1 running back in the class, somebody they had traded up for, somebody they like that fits their system in Javonte Williams from North Carolina. And they, you don't just do that to put him on the bench. You want that guy to be the guy. Melvin Gordon is pretty solid back. He was pretty solid last year. I think they could trade him. A lot of things make sense here. Also, you factor in what teams tried to get Javonte Williams or tried to get Najee Harris in the draft, and then weren't able to fill that running back hole. Dolphins and Falcons, why they're in tier 1 here. Melvin Gordon, a pretty good back that I think fits both those teams. He has nothing to do with the June 1st thing. This trade could happen today. It could happen after June 1st. It's the same thing. The Broncos clear $6.94 million. They don't really need that money. It definitely is nice to have that money, but maybe a pick, something around it's tough to figure out the value, but I'd say something around a 3rd round pick for him. That'd be nice for the Broncos there because it's really, I don't know if he was pretty good last year. I don't know if it's going to make or break their team. I like Javonte Williams as their running back 1. That's me. The Dolphins, again, I think mainly the Dolphins. For some reason, the Falcons, they actually, it's funny because the Falcons traded with the Broncos when the Broncos went up to get Javonte Williams. So the Falcons, surprisingly, I think it's shocking actually, did not like Javonte Williams. I think they would have liked, I heard they would have liked Najee Harris. He obviously went in the 1st round, possibly Travis Etienne as well. But it really feels like they just really like Mike Davis. But if there's a way for them to get better, if they trade Julio Jones away, clear that $15.3 million, don't have to take a chunk of that salary, which is ideal for them, they can turn around and pay their rookie class and pay the $6.94 to Melvin Gordon. Maybe they're willing to give up, but maybe a 2nd round pick or maybe to make the 3rd round pick happen. if the Broncos pay a little bit of that 6.94, remember the Broncos have the space. If they're going to get a pick back, they'll be willing to pay $2 or $3 million of that. In my opinion, it's not about the cap space, saving that cap space. It's more about getting the pick and being able to use Javonte Williams and Mike Boone a little more. So yeah, I really think the Dolphins, though, I really think they wanted somebody, in the draft there. I think they wanted. It felt like they wanted Najee Harris. They really wanted him in the first round. Possibly they thought about taking him when they took Jalen Phillips, but you gotta go Jalen Phillips there, right choice. Maybe trading back in they tried to do hurt a lot of these things, but Dolphins would make a lot of sense to trade for Melvin Gordon. I would like that for both sides there. So I haven't heard anything about that, nothing. I would still say it's something to look out for. It is interesting though because the June 1st thing, the post June 1st thing doesn't affect this, so you'd think maybe it would have happened. We will see though. We will see. It's got, you would think, because OTAs are starting here. They're going. You think it would have to happen soon. Now, Dolphins are that top team. Watch out for the Falcons. Tier 2, I'd throw the Bills. They got a number of running backs. I think they're pretty set. I think they're set. I think they should think they can get better with a guy like Melvin Gordon. I would love Melvin Gordon for the Bills. And then more of a wild card, the Cardinals. I think they should be in on this. I think they like their duo over there. I feel like they got 2 premium number 2s. Again, I like Chase Edmonds. I like James Conner. To me, they're high-end number 2s. I think they need a number 1 running back. I think Gordon's better than both of them. I just don't think they probably won't be in on them, but maybe, who knows? Same with the Bills. They're kind of in the same range there. But Dolphins, Falcons, really like the Dolphins. I'm thinking I'm on to something here. I don't know. I'm thinking I'm on to something, but nobody's talking about it. So we'll see. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Some other players look out for. N'Keal Harry, I think we almost could see get traded if they actually trade for Julio Jones. I think N'Keal Harry could be involved in that. I think Sony Michel can be involved in that because Sony Michel still got talent, but the Patriots got a number of running backs. They like their young backs. I love Ramondre Stevenson. They drafted him this year too. So I mean, they're even adding to that group. It's what they always. It's the Patriots way. Sony Michel, I think, has talent in him still. I think he fits Arthur Smith's scheme in the Falcons, so that's why he can be involved as well. I actually thought of, what if there's like some sort of 3-way trade? Long shot, absolute long shot. But I can see, even with the Titans been linked to Julio Jones, but the Patriots get Julio Jones. The Titans maybe get N'Keal Harry. The Falcons get Rashaan Evans, who I have listed here from the Titans. Obviously, picks are thrown in there. I kind of like that idea just because everyone kind of gets what they want. It makes a lot of sense. So N'Keal Harry could be off to a team like the Titans, the Falcons, the 49ers for sure. Teams like that. And the same thing goes, you see Anthony Miller at the bottom. There's been some talks around him. Those kind of went away. It's weird, though, because you sometimes when those talks go away, it has to do with the June 1st savings. But there's nothing there. Anthony Miller, they saved the same amount of money. N'Keal Harry is actually about $500K or so more. Anthony Miller is the same amount of money traded now and after June 1st. But they also, so you think, maybe they want to give him another shot because he has talent. He'll make that big time play. He'll drop the easy ball or he'll punch somebody in the face and get ejected. So you got to cut it out with that. I still think he has talent though. He's kind of got big playability. So maybe you thought, maybe they were trying to make it work with him, but they signed Damiere Byrd, who I like, so that maybe that bumps Anthony Miller down or he competes with them, So I still think they can trade him. We talked about Rashaan Evans, the Titans. Yeah, the Titans with Rashaan Evans. He has had moments. He was a first-round pick. He's had moments. That playoff game against the Patriots 2 years ago, I thought he played insane. So I think he fits more of a 4-3 team. I think he actually be a very good linebacker in a 4-3 team. Titans also have Jayon Brown. They have David Long, and they drafted Monty Rice. These guys all fit what they're trying to do. I think Evans fits more of a 4-3. So they could trade him for those reasons. So there's some other guys. I mean, we can sit here and list guys all day. A couple other Patriots that have been brought up, Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson. I was never really a big believer Gilmore can get traded. J.C. Jackson I thought could, but we're at the point where they kind of want those guys to be their 2 outside corners, so I just don't really see it anymore, but possibility for maybe a guy like J.C. Jackson, but I think a long shot. We'll see, though. So, yeah, really enjoy making videos like this. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Really like the Melvin Gordon one. Yeah, I think I'm on to something, but who knows? I would kind of like it for both parties, whoever it may be, because I really want Javonte Williams to be the guy in Denver, but Melvin Gordon's heck of a back still. So, yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. We're always talking on Twitter about these things, giving you updates on numbers, trades, all that stuff. Got record predictions going on right now, so please smash the like button, subscribe, check all those videos out, follow our Twitter. Yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.